Good morning and welcome to
Oh,
the
one moment.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the RFP for a cafeteria for the city of St. Louis. Uh, my name is Nodrick Tankins, and I am pleased to be here. And thank you all for joining. So we will go ahead and call this meeting to order at 10:04, Thursday, July 11th, 2024. And as I mentioned, my name is Nodrick Tankins. I'm Special Assistant to the Comptroller of St. Louis City, and I'm the chair of this selection committee. And we can all take a brief moment to introduce ourselves. Um, so, Shauna.
Hi, I'm Shauna Morton, and I am the executive assistant to the comptroller.
Good morning, Shauna. Thank you for joining. Miss Ingracia.
Good morning, everybody. Christine Ingracia representing the president's office.
Thank you, Miss Ingracia. Good morning. Mr. Bailey.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Bailey, Special Assistant to the Mayor, representing the Mayor's office.
Thank you for joining, and good morning again. And we have one selection committee member missing today. His name is Monroe Smith. He will be joining us for future meetings, but in his absence, I'll go ahead and introduce our non-voting member, Mr. Morrow.
Yeah, my name is Nick Morrow. I'm an attorney with the City Councilor's Office. I'm in the Transactions Unit. I'm not a committee member, but I'm here to assist with any procedural questions.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Good morning and welcome. So let's start off with just a brief overview of why we're here. Hopefully you all you all did receive a copy of the RFP draft and were asked to review it before this meeting. So I'm just going to start with the project's overview. And it states, by popular demand, the Office of the Comptroller is requesting proposals for qualified vendors to operate innovative food service concepts in two busy city government buildings in downtown St. Louis. Those buildings referenced there would be City Hall and Building 1520 Market Street. This request for proposals is to promote and ensure the fairest, most efficient means to obtain the benefit of the most qualified, responsive, and responsible proposal. Vendors interested in submitting a proposal in response to this RFP will be referred to as respondents or operators. Just to expand on that a little bit, there has been much talk about a cafeteria or a food option in downtown St. Louis. We have had one in the past for many years, and that's why the first beginning of that statement was by popular demand. There have been many conversations in many departments discussing the need for a good food option at the city. So our second agenda item is going to be to review the RFP and have a discussion. So I just want to ask, generally, do you all have any questions about the materials in the RFP or anything specifically that you'd like to have a conversation about?
I have a few questions. Am I okay to go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the spaces, there's the mezzanine location in City Hall on the second floor. Where are you envisioning that snack cart or mobile coffee cart to be set up?
I think that is all open for discussion. At this point, there is no perceived, location for that is better than any other. So that's a point for us to decide as we move forward. So do
And
you have a recommendation? I don't work at City Hall.
Nodrick, I can actually help provide some context here.
Yes, sir.
So that is actually a typo in the under subpoint A on the scope of services. That mezzanine level location is actually in 1520 Market Street. The opening would be right by the SLDC offices. And then the coffee cart would be either right there on that mezzanine level or there's some tables down in the lobby level on the ground floor, and that is where the prospective coffee cart would be located.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just gonna say sometimes, because the second floor is where the board is, and it can get kind of crowded up here, depending on committee hearings and things like that. Is there a reason that in 1520 it just wouldn't be located on the first floor like it has been in the past?
Well, the logic of or my thinking in the proposal was that we would have both options available. So the goal is to seek out, let's say, a vendor for coffee, for example, on that first floor at Building 1520 Market, but also to be seeking out a vendor to run the actual cafeteria that is located on the second floor of 1520 Market. So
Okay.
both options, and the vendor does not have to be the same vendor in my thinking. We could have multiple, let's say, programs or projects that come out of this.
Okay. And then how are you envisioning the jurors accessing the kitchen at City Hall since it's in the basement?
Well, I'm not aware of how that has been done in the past. Does anyone have any more insight and scope onto how the cafeteria operated in the basement in the past?
I have some. I've been there 30 years. So what are you asking? You're asking how do the jurors get into the basement?
Right. Yeah,
Is
that's an employee entrance only. Yeah, in my experience, it's only been City Hall employees that use that location. I just wanted that had been thought out and discussed with like perhaps the marshals or things like that.
I know jurors used to come there many years ago. I don't know when Pam was there, whether or not the jurors came, but I imagine so. So in the past, they have come to City Hall, and I guess they could come through the mayor's circle, that area, and come in and go downstairs. Yeah.
Would
Okay.
there be any, let's say, problems with them just coming in the main entrance and going down the elevator?
No, shouldn't be.
So
Okay. Yeah, I just want
go ahead.
to make sure that there wasn't any sort of security type issue since that entrance down there is not particular. There's just one marshal.
Right, that makes sense. Perhaps we could, maybe flesh this out a little bit, how to functionally make that happen. If the jurors are going to be escorted, perhaps the marshals say who's going to the cafeteria and bring them all over and are able to get a, more streamlined access to the building. That's a potential, let's say, workaround. Another potential option that comes to my mind is I know that there are alternative entrances to the basement area that are just locked right now. And perhaps that can be opened up. I believe there's an entrance that comes from the outside directly into the back of the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And at
I don't
one
think
point it was accessed that way.
Yeah, they would have to have a guard. So I think they might be low staff. That's why even the rear entrance near the parking lot, That's why sometimes during the day that's actually closed. I think staffing issues. So I think it'd be a good idea to discuss with the marshals um, past procedures regarding jurors or people accessing the cafeteria.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to hold up the RFP. I just wanted to make sure that it was something that they were aware of. And then I was curious if there was any opportunity to add language about the possibility of offering healthy options or a focus on providing like using local food or local farmers or vendors. Not that it's a requirement. I think it would just be nice to have those options if the vendor thinks they would be able to provide those.
Mhm.
So my answer to that is yes. We definitely want to allow for healthy food options. That's part of the main purpose of having a potential cafeteria, is to offer that to the employees. And the current thinking is also to offer smaller, so-called mom and pop organizations to maybe get exposure by working with the city, and potentially it could be some sort of joint venture. Like, I'm just throwing this out here, but imagine a larger vendor, just say like a Chick-fil-A, partners with a smaller vendor that does tacos or whatever. And then that way the smaller one can get a little bit of perhaps access to the industry, access to larger economies of scale, for example, access to training on how to run a larger operation, and get the exposure of being a vendor in the city. And we've even considered in that type of scenario where we have a large vendor potentially partnering with a smaller one, or operating, for example, out of the same space, using the 1520 Market location as an example, where you have a vendor on the first floor in the entrance and a vendor in the actual cafeteria, that one of them is rotated out on some type of periodic basis. So perhaps the first floor vendor stays for a year
Yeah,
and rotates through.
Cool. That makes sense.
So we are definitely able to update that language. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, of course. I've got two more. Sorry. I was curious if you were going to put a dollar amount in there, just so people have some general idea about what the city is expecting to be able to pay for this. So you don't get a bunch of responses that are way off the mark.
Well, we can definitely add that language. We left it open because we weren't sure what would be appropriate for a dollar amount, and what situation that we would be addressing with a dollar amount. So a coffee cart is different than running the entire cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we place that amount on there? So I'm definitely open to adding any language like that if it's appropriate, but I'm not sure if that would increase or decrease participation. If a larger vendor, for example, says, well, they're only going to pay us X amount of dollars, that ain't worth my time. Why even look at it and read it and do a proposal?
Right. I guess to counter that is just if you have $500,000 to do this, or $100,000, whatever the amount is, and everybody responds that it's going to cost more, so you can't, then you have no RFPs. It's not a make it or break it thing for me. It's just, I think, something to consider.
Does anyone else have a thought on that?
So, Nadrick, have you checked what they used to charge in the past?
As far as the fee at City Hall?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I do not know those numbers right now, no.
So that would be really good to look into, because I think they only, whatever it was, yeah, check into that. Because
I-
they did pay a fee, but it wasn't very high.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and I can try to add some background here too. It was intentionally left. Compensation was intentionally left out of this current draft of the RFP because the spaces are in need of pretty substantial capital improvements, and so the thinking was um, to promote or to incentivize responses um, to the fullest extent possible was to remain flexible on that point. And so depending on the level of capital improvement that the vendor can contribute, then that would be part of the negotiated amount as well.
So let me understand this. So we're expecting for the vendors or whoever respond to these RFPs to actually do the rehab of these spaces, or the city's going to offer
Correct.
some sort of.
Correct. I think my understanding on that is that the city is open to offering um, some funding toward the capital improvement, but that it would also potentially be the responsibility of the vendor to bring the space up to date and function based on their needs, and then the the vendor would receive compensation by charging, a fee to the public for their and employees for their purchases, and then anything else in terms of how much funding the city can provide or a monthly rental fee paid to the city was all open to negotiation based on the proposal.
That makes sense, Ms. Bailey.
I understand now.
So what are your thoughts about it? It looks like you have a comment.
Yeah, that's a lot to be asking somebody. It's not their space to invest that type of money into our space. Um, I'm even thinking about just like equipment. I'm sure some of the stuff I know in 1520 is probably not even salvageable. You know, and so that whole entire space will have to be renovated, and putting on whoever's responsible for doing that, putting, that type of money and equipment in could get very, very, very costly. Uh, what if the relationship doesn't work out well? Do they take their equipment back? It, I think if it's ours, we'll then have more of a control over what can go in that space, what that number would look like, as far as charging. I mean, yeah, charging to rent the space or whatever. But yeah, that's a lot. And then I did
Understood.
have a question.
Go ahead.
Also, whoever accepts or is selected for this process, I mean, for this purpose, they will only have operating rights for that specific location. Meaning, and I love the concept of having one vendor at downstairs of 1520, one vendor upstairs outside SLDC, and possibly another one. I love all that. City Hall is a beast in itself. And what I'm getting at, I remember the days when the snack shop or whatever was open in the basement. They will only have access to that snack shop because I know a lot of cultural events and different events happen definitely at City Hall in the Rotunda. People, yeah, for a minute there were monthly different various vendors coming in. That wouldn't a contract or a deal with this whatever vendor that takes over the City Hall cooking area, that wouldn't affect what happens in the Rotunda, will it?
I would say that, generally logically thinking that it's potentially going to be some sort of maybe conflict or, uh, you know, um, space where there's, what's the word, competition for those dollars. But I think we've written the RFP with the language that would accommodate those type of situations where, for example, one of our conversations centered around hiring a sous chef who would be in charge of getting different vendors to come through on different periodic basis. So to encompass the scenario you just laid out, if those vendors are going to be coming into City Hall, the sous chef could potentially schedule that with whoever's throwing that event, and they use the actual space.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I
No,
think whoever has I'm just saying whoever has access to that space, since we're using City Hall, that space in that kitchen downstairs, they should have access to that space, not basically authority over the entire building. There's a lot of events that happen in that building. People rent the rotunda out for different things. I don't think they should have to go through whoever we've contracted through or with in that cafeteria area for the entire building.
okay, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. The cafeteria is in the basement. They would just be in the basement.
No, if like for instance, during Hispanic Heritage Month, different vendors come in, different offices or whatever will have somebody to come in, or they'll meet with Travis Hauser and have that space in the rotunda for their event or for
Right.
whatever it is. I understand the professionalism and everything and the creativity of having a sous chef, but that individual should have control over whatever happens in that cafeteria area in the bottom of City Hall, not the entire building.
Correct. The way I'm understanding what you're saying is that the rotunda or the open common area can be congested because of these vendors coming through, and you don't want them to potentially have access to the entire building that could potentially interrupt city functions. Is that what you're saying? So I agree with you there. And in this scenario, what I'm describing is that sous chef, if that was the option, that was selected, would take those vendors that come through the special events from Travis and move that to the location in the basement. Like, we know it's been scheduled out. They're going to come through. We're giving the city multiple options to have ethnic food this time, have tacos this time, have pizza this time, but to move it from the rotunda to the basement area so that it's not a conflict with city functions. So would you be in favor of
I don't think
that description? What's that?
I think Kevin is, I agree with Kevin. I think that the cafeteria vendor would be in the basement separate from some of the other things that happen. I think that's typically how we've done it. Like, if somebody wanted to partner with the cafeteria people, I suppose they could do that. But I think that people like being in the rotunda for those special type events. And, like our office does that. I know the mayor's office does it. The comptroller's office, or the license collector's office does that. And I think that they like to be set up in the rotunda because there's just more space and it's a special type of event. It's like a one-off outside of just going to grab lunch every day on a regular basis.
Yeah. So I'm confused. So you're talking about the cafeteria in the basement. Are you saying, Nadrick, that they would bring up like a cart to the rotunda area? Is that what you're saying?
No, that isn't what I was describing.
So
I
everything would
thought
stay in the
Mr.
basement.
Bailey was saying that those special events that are happening currently are sometimes an issue because
No,
it
they're
just
not an
adds
issue.
more people to the space.
No, it's not an issue at all. No, it's the ambiance of being in the rotunda and all that. It adds to people's events. I just don't want whoever accepts or selected for this RFP to have control over anything that happens throughout the building. That individual should control that cafeteria space in the basement of City Hall, and that's it. I agree
That's correct.
with Christina. I mean, excuse me, Alderwoman Gracia. If they want to partner with with that vendor, that's fine. But if not, they should have no bearings on what occurs. That's just my suggestion, though.
And I
Um,
wholeheartedly agree with you there. In every scenario of this RFP, the least space is the least space.
yeah, I
So
don't think
if
they've
we lease
ever come
the
up to the
cafeteria in the
rotunda.
basement to a
Yeah,
vendor, that's all they have access to. That's what their
right,
lease is going to say. That's
right.
all you have control over.
Okay.
Yeah, and the 30 years I've been there, I don't think they've ever come up to the rotunda. I think Pam tried one time to have a cart and someone complained. And so then she had to take the cart back downstairs, but that was not a part of her lease, is to come up and be in the rotunda. I don't think I've ever seen that other than that. Yeah.
Okay. So
You have
sorry for
answered my question.
misunderstanding what you were saying. So the answer to your question again is the least space would be the least space. That's where they're authorized to be, and that's what they're paying for. They should not be in other areas of City Hall or 1520 making sales unless, it's a special situation and it's been agreed that this is authorized that you can do that.
Sure.
My last question is, there's a mention of startup costs possibly being available. I was curious where those were coming from and how much was available.
At this point, I don't have answers to that. Um, it would definitely have to be a budgeted item. In conversations with the comptroller and the legal department about it, the one framework to put the RFP in is that now we may go with the smaller vendor, the cart, healthy options that are fast and quick and easy, and then also long-term fund the restoration that's going to be the huge capital improvement once we find out those numbers. I have been asking other city departments to give me estimates of repairing this or buying that or buying this. But what I found out is that just the way the city's aligned and how the bids go out and whatever, that you kind of have to have an RFP to even get that analysis done of how much money is this going to cost. And we need to know that, what the total rehab cost of that cafeteria in 1520 Market is before we could budget for it, before we could say this much money is available for it. But I'm aware that this item is requested by many people in the city, and it wasn't actually the comptroller's office that idea that's birthing this project. It was the mayor's office and the legal department who put this back on the radar and said, let's go forward and do it. So with that being the case, if the mayor's office is potentially on board with it, that perhaps there's a way to get those potential funds in the future, that it's not an unknown quantity, and maybe not, a big hill to climb to say, we need these structural and engineering rehabs anyway. Like Mr. Bailey said, perhaps it is the responsibility of the city to pay for the hoods, for the, the safety of the space and not the actual vendor. But that's part of the goal of the RFP, is to find out how sensitive vendors are to a capital contribution.
Okay. It makes me a little nervous to say that there are startup costs available without knowing specifically where they're coming from or what the amount is. I don't think it's unheard of. I mean, a lot of restaurants have to build out the spaces that they lease. That's not atypical. But I would assume also in terms of cost, like you could work with our facilities department to at least have a ballpark about what you think upgrades need to be. To
Or
give you
BPS too, I think,
Right.
right.
BPS.
And I
And
agree with you both on that.
they,
And I've
they
spoken to
upgraded,
facilities and
yeah,
BPS, and they both told me it's above their scope. It's too big of a potential project for them to just eyeball it without the official process in place. That's what I was told, that they're not willing to just go and say that's 5,000, that's 10,000 without having the actual subject matter experts come and look. And that takes, it's a higher standard, basically a higher threshold to get that information. So I agree with you, Ms. Ingracia, that we need to find out those questions. I'm not sure the mechanism of how we find it out internally without doing a completely separate RFP to get that info. And so again, part of, I believe, the thought process and leaving this particular RFP as broad as it is, as you just mentioned, a restaurateur has the capability of doing that assessment and telling us how much it's going to cost, or how much, they even would have in their potential budget to pay for it themselves, or the request that they have of how much they need from the city to build it out. So that's one avenue of completion. And sorry, Shauna, go ahead. I recognize you to speak.
oh, sorry about that. Yes, so I, I think it was maybe 10 years ago. It's been a while, but they did redo that cafeteria in the City Hall basement from what it used to be. There was a gentleman and his wife that was there for like 30 years, a really long time. And then I think when Pam came in, or it wasn't too long ago that they redid that space and painted and got all new items in there. So I mean, I would think facilities would have like the markup, or how did they go about that? How did they?
I do actually have the background on that, and it wasn't facilities who actually did it. It was the vendor who did it. They spent their own hard-earned
Okay.
cash and put all that equipment in that city basement and paid for the paint and the tile and all of that. They did it
Yeah.
in concert with facilities. Facilities is actually right next door, so they knew what was going on and was able to facilitate the vendor getting the light fixtures installed. But the vendor paid for all of those
Upgrades. Yeah.
repairs. And when I read that original RFP from that era, that's what it said. It said that they would be wholly responsible. City was not taking any liability on anything beyond the utilities and the structure itself. And that's why we're kind of this time saying we're willing to come up with some money if need be, just to be frank about 15-20, the city's going to have to put some money up to get that cafeteria going. It's a known quantity, and we will definitely work long term to do that. But it would be a great help if a restaurateur who has that capability can tell us through their own analysis. Well, in my experience, it cost us $150,000 for a project of this size. And then we can go from there.
Yeah, I think I would be more comfortable if we knew how much the city had to offer and where that money's coming from before we just put something in there that says that startup costs are available. And the only other thing I had was just that vendors is spelled incorrectly in a few different places. So just take a peek at that. And thanks for letting me weigh in.
Oh, no problem. You are more than welcome to speak as much or as little as you want. We're here to get your feedback. All ideas are good ideas in this context. And you all have been here at the city for much longer than I have, so you definitely have much more context in how these things happen and what's appropriate. Do we have any other questions on the RFP or discussion points? Silence. I'm gonna say that's a no. So go ahead, Mr. Bailey.
No, I was saying I'm good. I didn't realize I had muted myself again.
Oh, okay. So the only thing I wanted to particularly talk about is beyond what we've already discussed is the actual timeline for the RFP. Since Ms. Ingracia is saying that she, recommends that we find out some answers to her questions before we put this out there. Do you all think this timeline is still appropriate by putting the request out Monday? Or should we take a little more time, get those answers before we move forward?
If possible, maybe we can just push it out like a week and meet again and approve an RFP once you're able to get some of the answers and make some of the changes we discussed today.
Anyone have a different viewpoint or a different comment they'd like to make?
I agree with Ingracia.
I agree as well.
So do I. Thank you all for that. So with that being said, then that looks like we are going to push the date from the 15th to the following Monday, pending answers to our questions, correct?
Yeah, and if you want to put something on the calendar now while we're all here, I'm happy to look at my calendar.
I would love to do that, but we know how that goes. We'll be 2 hours trying to figure out a time that we can all be there. So let's follow up with that. What's that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll be out. Let's see, I'll be back from my trip on the 22nd. So I'm available to meet that week of the 22nd.
Okay.
I am too.
I'm Monday, good as well.
Yeah, Monday and Thursday are wide open for me right now.
Yeah, so the 22nd is good. And then if we all agree, you could still post it on the 23rd or 24th.
Okay, well, Miss Ingracia, I think it was easier than I thought. We're all free.
This is the easiest, yeah. This is to do it
that week.
So I'm available on the 22nd. I'll be back.
Okay, so I'm tentatively gonna say yes, we can all meet that day or that week, but I'm gonna follow up with you all shortly and ask and make sure. We're missing one member now, and he wasn't able to meet today. So I just want to verify that we're all able to do that before, making that the day or time. But the week of the 22nd is noted.
And then would that move everything else that you
Correct.
have on
we just be looking at pushing all those dates back a week, unless you all have further insight or want to discuss it more. All right. 1 second. I lost my screen. Oh, are you all seeing my calendar?
I'm not
sure.
sure.
Your calendar and your email.
Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. Next agenda item. So we're not voting to approve the RFP today because we do want to make some adjustments, and this actually will be beneficial for the whole group because Mr. Monroe Smith should potentially be able to join us to vote on accepting the draft or not. So let's, hey, Mr. Morrow, do we need to entertain a motion to adjust this agenda and remove voting?
No, you do not need to do that. You do not need a vote to approve the RFP. It's just tabled for now. I do think it would be helpful to talk about solicitation methods.
You want to have that discussion now or in 2 weeks?
So I think you can talk about it now, and it would be helpful, and then you can vote on it along with the RFP next time.
What page is that mentioned? Do you know off the top of your head?
I do not believe it says the any kind of solicitation method in the RFP itself. So if you would prefer, the committee can talk about those next time. There's
Yeah,
no
be in the RFP. I don't think it needs to be in the RFP, but I'm happy to talk about it this time or next meeting. Either one works.
Let's go ahead and
Right.
give 5 minutes to it if everybody's amenable to that. What are the normal ways of notifying the public? I know we post to our website, but are there additional avenues we go that would be appropriate and efficient in 2024?
I think it would be helpful to probably send it to the Restaurant Association, and there's also a small business group that's run by Danny Eichenhorst. I'm happy to forward it to her or send you her contact information. They represent more sort like mom and pop shops, possibly the Hispanic Chamber, some of the more immigrant focused organizations. I'm happy to pass contact info to you if you'd like.
I would love to entertain those contexts. Nick, do you see any potential problem or conflicts if we notify individual organizations in that manner versus just a general public notice somewhere?
No, there's no issue with that. That's okay. And it's a good idea to, next time you can have a kind of a tentative list in place of suggested solicitation methods ready for the committee to review.
Beyond what Ms. Ingracias has just mentioned, I would think that Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn would be available and appropriate. I'm not sure if they've been used in the past, but I see the mayor post every day 2 or 3 times. So that's potentially a way to get eyes on the RFP as well. So that's just a comment. You all can comment if you'd like. Otherwise, let's
like magazines, maybe like Sauce, or is that, I don't know, just different magazines, St. Louis food magazines, maybe put that in there.
Yes, ma'am.
I think those are all good ideas. I do have a question about paying for the ad, though. Or do we, how do we do that? Is there a budget and how much is that budget to pay, for magazine space, or a blurb in a local publication? Do you know, Ms. Morton?
Not sure. We could ask Jason.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you have a budget for it, it would be in the comptroller's office.
Right.
All right. Okay. Does anyone have anything else? Well, if no one has any other comments, I think it's appropriate. Oh, go ahead. You're on mute. Ms. Ingracia, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, somebody else was talking to me in my office. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Thought you were getting my attention. All right. Well, at this moment, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting and
I will
to
make a motion, I'm sorry, to adjourn until possibly the 22nd of July.
Second,
Second.
and then let's all vote. Nick, can you do a roll call, please?
Sure, 1 second. Okay. Nodrick Tankins,
Aye.
Christine Ingracia,
Aye.
Kevin Bailey,
Aye.
Shanna Morton.
aye.
That's 4 aye votes. Motion carries. Thank you all for joining, and I hope to see you the week of the 22nd.
Thank you.
Likewise. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one, everybody.
You too.